My name is Michael Holdmann. I'm founder of and CEO of Prasaga. We're a single layer blockchain. We are at this time looking for, we do a POS, PoW hybrid. We are looking for miners to start to join. We've got a private validator sale going on at this time. And I'll talk all about this as soon as my deck gets up. And here it is. Yes, there is a new PoW in town. We definitely believe that proof of work has to be done in order to actually secure a chain. So, Saga chain, that's the name of our chain. Everything's Saga. We've got Saga OS. We replace smart contracts with an actual operating system. It's called a first-class object model. It's the same underlying foundational architecture that's used for Windows, Linux, Mac OS X, Android, and iOS. This was formed, we have if you see our logo, it looks like it's got two infinity symbols, but it's actually 4 Ps. And it stands for purpose, people, planet, and philanthropy. We are a Swiss foundation. We formed on June 20th of 2022. Finally registered the foundation. We started this project back in September of 2017. It was not to build a native chain. It was to integrate a native chain into an Internet of Things and Smart City message bus in order to hand over the power or the control of all data that was produced to those individuals that own the devices instead of to the large walled gardens like Apple and Microsoft and Google and such. Our focus is global. We do believe enterprise adoption is incredibly important. Our mission is to become the underlying foundation for all global transactions, financial or other. And in order to do that, we have to ensure that we have a lot of velocity, a high velocity on our chain, and this is what's important for the miners. In our tokenomics, we are a pro block producer chain. Within 10 years, 47% of the entire token allocation will belong to miners and validators, or the block producers as we call them. So the first thing that we're looking at as a small team, our focus, although you can do an NFT on it, you can do anything that you want on our chain, we are an infrastructure, but our focus is really on supply chain. The reason is because there's $15 trillion a year in transactions done on supply chain. That gives a really good base for revenue for miners and a lot of transactions, high velocity. This is a team. Real quick, I've been in technology for 6 decades now. David Bieberman, my CTO, has been in technology for 6 decades now. And Jay Moore is the baby of the founders. He's been in tech for 5 decades. Jay's been mainly in the video gaming industry. For myself, networking, telecommunications, and then for Dave, he's written in 63 programming languages. He's written 3 programming languages. He sat with Vince Cerf and Bob Kahn at NIST in the 80s. Dave wrote the protocols that make TCP and IP actually do something. He is directly responsible for Web 1. In the 90s, David Bieberman and Ross Wheeler had a company called Routerware. They wrote the high-performance IP stack that was chosen by Juniper, Foundry, Extreme, D-Link, and others. Sold that to Wind River. It's known as the Wind River IP stack. David Bieberman is directly responsible for Web 2. We will be responsible for Web 3. One of the things that people don't kind of grasp, they always ask, do you have an SDK? Well, because of what we did, because we have a single instance global class tree, our blockchain is the SDK. And this is a really hard concept to kind of grasp, but you'll see how this works very well. With us today, though, I want to make sure we got Corky Bizjak is here, Nicole Colwell is here, Jacob Holdmann is here, myself and David Bieberman are here. So you'll find one of us either walking around or at the booth. One of the things I want to point out is the shirt that I'm wearing. We're looking for large adoption, both in enterprise and consumer. And one of the things that we feel is halting adoption or limited adoption within the blockchain is the programming language that they're using. So we've decided to use Python as our programming language. Why not use an ocean full of developers worldwide instead of just a small pond? The cost should come down across the board for enterprises in order to adopt. So, scaling for global. This is what we worked on: scaling, decentralization, and security. So for scaling, anytime you add a resource, it adds throughput. You're not all competing for the same exact block. We actually created what you would look at a multi-core processor and put that onto a blockchain. So we can do blocks in parallel. State moves between shards. Impossible to move state or a smart contract from one shard to another shard on layer 1. Technically possible, but very, very difficult to do it with a layer 2. You serialize to the individual shard on a smart contract. We've known this since Dr. Amdahl from IBM wrote Amdahl's Law, looking for where in a mainframe you can do process in parallel and where you would serialize. It serializes at the smart contract. Hybrid consensus, POS, POW. We're looking now, and Dave's got to make the decision, 128 or 256 nodes per shard. We're looking about 70%, where every single node will be a miner. There is a leader on each shard. They will assign 21 of the nodes that are there to come up with BFT consensus. That consensus is reached, a block is produced. Then every node competes as a miner. Those miners then, they will secure that block. And then it goes again one time for signature to again say, yes, this POW was done and this block is verified. Then that gets given to the leader, that hash, and that hash is then braided with all of the leaders from all of the other shards. So now you have to take over 51% of the entire chain instead of 51% of just one shard. Validators and miners, block producers. The reward split, and two of the gentlemen that were on the employee slide are the economists that are working on this. I don't have the amount of Saga coin that will be rewarded per block yet, but the split will be 70% of the reward will go to the miner that wins the block. 30% will be shared amongst the 21 validators that actually validated the thing. So even if you don't win the block, you will receive revenue if you're one of the signers on there. So it is a hybrid POW POS. This increases security. I can mitigate both short-term attack by having POS. I can mitigate long-term attack by having POW, which is the most important thing. Again, the leader assigns the validator nodes for new block consensus, and it's increased energy efficiency, and I'll talk to you about that. I know that in Bitcoin, there's a lot of talk in the markets, oh, it uses too much power, it's not efficient and such like that. We'll talk about how POW will be efficient. Collusion mitigation. So the way that this works, we wrote our own verifiable random function. It's a non-grindable VFR. We couldn't find one out there, either hardware or software-wise, that was not grindable. So with this, the actual VFR is based on the POW hash that's produced on each block. We will randomly move node operators from one shard to another shard in order to limit collusion. What happens when that moves, and this is part of our economics, there will be a gas or a transaction fee that goes to the node operators. There is a tax on that fee, and that tax is the only revenue that the foundation will ever realize. And that will cover operating expense, global operational costs. It will cover philanthropic efforts, the grants and such, in order to get the developers to come onto the chain. And finally, it will allow us to dynamically burn based on the velocity of the blockchain economy in order to stabilize the purchasing power of the coin, which is the ultimate goal of this project. How do we become a true global currency? How can you use this coin, accept it today for services you give with full confidence and trust that tomorrow when you go to buy services, it will hold the same value? We're not here to be another store of value. There's enough of those out there. There's enough of these speculative assets. We're here to solve big problems. Lawrence White, He got, in 1982, got his PhD from UCLA. He's designed fiat currencies for governments over the past 4 decades. And he's the one that's actually writing the algorithms for that. He's a professor at George Mason right now. Stephen Moore is a chief economist. He's a budget policy expert. You might know his name from, he was Trump's choice for the Fed, although he turned it down because how the politics are going in the US right now. And they are the ones that are kind of coming up with this. The transaction fee will be a % of the GDP. We can measure the gross domestic product of the chain itself. So we go on percentages of GDP. And that will be a % of the GDP. And they're the ones that will figure out, okay, how much do we burn? What do we do with the transaction fee and such? So the validator sale, this is what we have going on right now. So during private testnet or public testnet, we're going to have 1,000 nodes. And those 1,000 nodes will be minting 8.1 billion token. We are now in discussions with numerous enterprises. We've actually got 4 electronic vehicle manufacturers that are looking for us to put our chain, use our chain for their supply chain for the next production runs. That's why we need token. We need enough token for a supply chain to be able to settle all debt. And just remember, in our world, a transaction is not just moving money from one account to another, but moving the wiper blades from one account to another is also a transaction. So there's a lot more opportunity for transactions for miners and validators in this network. We're looking, our goal is to make it so that you can have 100 megabit per second connection. We don't want you to have gig or terabit connections. You will be able to do with CPU, although GPU and ASICs will of course win more. It is a SHA-256 algorithm that we're using. So it should work it'll work on any of the Bitcoin ASICs machines that are out there. Right now, we actually just got back from Vietnam. Met with about 30 funds over there. One of them just came in, so that number is now there's 680 nodes available because they just came in for on a 3 million allocation in this. And we've got a few other funds that are also committing already. 100,000 minimum, 3 million maximum. The idea of this is to get the coin and distributed to as many people in the world as possible. Again, we're here for all 8 billion people. We're not just here for speculators and such like that. We really want this to try to be a global currency. So mainnet, the projected performance, and this is kind of where the efficiency comes in. So if you look at it this way, and I don't know where my timer stops, so if I've got 9 minutes left still. That's good. We are producing blocks in parallel, and then we're taking the hash power from each shard and hash braiding it with all of the other shards that are out there. We're looking at 15-second PoW on each block. So again, POS, consensus BFT, produce the block. PoW secures the block. The validators, again, sign to validate, yes, this block is secure, and then the leader spreads that around. So if you look at 15-second blocks on 1,000 shards, that's 4,000 blocks per minute. That's 40,000 blocks per 10 minutes or per single Bitcoin block. So although we're using the same amount of power, or maybe a little more, because 10 minutes of compute is 10 minutes of compute, we're producing 40,000 blocks. So the efficiency, energy efficiency per block is 40,000x better than a Bitcoin block. Ultimately, the goal is to reach minimum 1,000 shards with 128,000 nodes, or if Dave decides 256, then 500 shards with 256,000 or with 256 nodes. That will get us to a level that will be able to handle all global transactions. If there's more, there's more. Again, added resources adds throughput. As we need to pull up another shard because we have more transactions coming in, then we just go ahead and assign another pool as long as there's the 128 or 256 node operators sitting in that pool. we'll go ahead and turn up another shard. And it can be done dynamically, taken up and taken down dynamically, depending on the velocity of transaction that's happening at the network at any given moment. And that's my pitch. We would love for everybody to join in, come and talk to us. We do need everybody now. We've been doing this in development for 4 years. We've got 2 patents granted on this. One is for the operating system. The other is for that distributed PoW. And that is to guarantee the longest chain in case of network partitions and there's a fork. How do you know which chain is the proper chain when that partition comes back up? That's what our DPoW. These are all being granted. They were just assigned to the foundation, and they're all being granted to the world. So we are fully open source. We're an open, trustless, permissionless, decentralized chain. And I thank you.